So recently I had to deal with a little bit of bullying, some online trolling in the comments section of one of my previous videos on a different channel. And this might sound a bit insignificant, but I want to talk about my experiences regardless, just because I think it's worth talking about, especially given the fact that I am someone who classes themselves as a neurotic, as someone who's easily sensitive to stress and prone to anxiety and depression. And, you know, one nasty little comment, you know, for me seems like a big deal, whereas other people, you know, it might just be water off a duck's back. And yeah, let me just go ahead and explain what was going on there. So I posted a video, as I do, just talking about life in general. I was talking specifically about an issue where, you know, I tried really hard to do something, and then I tried some more and I tried some more, and it got to the point where I wasn't having the success that I wanted, and I wanted to just talk to the internet about how kind of hard work doesn't always pay off. And I was feeling quite, you know, stressed over the whole struggle of the whole situation, and just kind of wanted to, I guess, vent and sort of put out there that sometimes things don't always work, and I just wanted to offer up the counterpoint to the happy, positive narrative of success and, you know, getting there in the end. Because that, you know, it's true to say that, you know, you shouldn't just give up, you shouldn't just quit, you know, without trying. You should do what you need to do, but at some point, you know, if things aren't working out, perhaps you need to quit, perhaps you need to give up. And maybe, you know, I was kind of going through that whole kind of self-doubt kind of thing in my mind. And anyway, long story short, hundreds of people basically replied, and they all basically wished me well, and they were saying good luck, and I understand what you were saying, and I think you've done a really good thing by pointing this kind of thing out, which was great because my videos don't tend to get that many comments, but this one kind of really picked up and people were very complimentary, and I thought, great, brilliant, this is exactly the response I wanted. But there were one or two people that were quite negative, and I suppose you could say there were several that were sort of negative, as in, yeah, just, you know, quit, give up on your dreams or whatever, you know, like not very helpful, just kind of dismissive comments. But, you know, I can chalk that up as just, that's just people on the internet, you know, they're not invested in me, I'm not invested in them, they can say what they like. It was specifically the one or two comments where people kind of went out of their way to try to make me feel bad. And I kind of thought, well, why are you doing this? You know, like, I'm just basically putting out a bit of free content on the internet. You know, I'm not being rude or offensive in any way. And I was just trying to think, well, why would you do this? But of course, that's the thing with people who are bullies, you know, they don't go necessarily for people that are being controversial or something. They go for people who have this kind of perceived weakness. And I think because I was being honest, because I was being kind of vulnerable and not just saying, yeah, I'm going out there, I'm killing it, I'm succeeding in every way, because I wasn't saying I was this super, you know, productive, successful Chad that's just destroying life and just winning in life. I think people saw that as a sign of weakness, and perhaps that was a reason why it's like, right, let's get him type of thing. You know, it's kind of like that hyena mentality where they kind of see, you know, like the weak prey, and they specifically go after that one rather than, you know, the sort of the more successful one that they think can fight back and stuff like that. Now, here's the thing about me, like, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not, you know, in the schoolyard, in the playground, whereby people can bully me and I'm gonna, like, you know, cry about it or whatever. You know, I'm a grown adult in his 40s, so now if someone is to say anything negative towards me, I still might take it personally, and I do, and it does affect me, but the overriding feeling is still that, like, it's kind of more confusion, like why people would bother to, you know, target me in some way. So I was thinking about this whole thing, and, you know, in this particular incident, on this occasion, you know, like I say, one thing I thought was that perhaps because I was being open, honest, and talking about failures as I was as much about success, and, you know, I think sometimes people feel as though that you're bitching, you're moaning, you're complaining, you're being weak, you're being pathetic. It's not a good trait to sort of show weakness and vulnerability, especially with men. And therefore, I think perhaps you could argue that the bully wanted to kind of make an example of me. I don't really think that was the case, but if I'm trying to sort of work out what the motives, the reasoning were for the sort of trolling comments where people were basically, you know, being nasty towards me, I thought, well, maybe that was it. Maybe they kind of felt that I kind of deserved it because I wasn't being someone who was like giving a lot, as in I wasn't giving the internet necessarily motivation, encouragement, and setting an example of, you know, succeeding. You know, and that's valuable. It's good that people do that online, and I think we all need that. But it was weird because, like I say, I had hundreds of people that did thank me for being honest and vulnerable and genuine, and there was a lot of people that wanted that, and perhaps wanted that more so than just some generic, you know, pep talk. So, you know, I don't regret anything that I said in the video, and you know, like, you should, you know, if you're making something and 1,000 people benefit and are happy that you did that, yet one person is just annoyed that you did that, you know, it's like for no real good reason. You shouldn't have. Doesn't mean you should just not have done that thing that made so many people benefit. So, but really, I was kind of thinking about comments online specifically, you know, and I think when someone does, you know, try to criticize a video, say on YouTube, I think in their mind, if they're the person who doesn't just say, oh, you know, thanks for the content, thanks for the tip, thanks for the thing that you shared, you know, if you're not that person, or you're not just the person who watches and thinks, oh, this isn't for me, I'll move on to the next video. If you're someone who specifically wants to leave a negative comment, and especially if it's contrary to other positive comments, I think in your mind, if you're the person that's doing this, you're sort of thinking, I'm special because I've seen a negative thing in this person's presentation. You know, I've seen, like, for example, if you were to look at the video that I'm presenting right now, you might think, okay, this guy seems a little bit unsure of himself. He seems a bit sort of anxious. He seems like he's got some kind of problems, and I have. There you go. You can have that as your ammunition against me if you really want to try and troll me. But that's the whole point of my channel, to sort of have the problems but deal with it anyway. But anyway, yeah, I feel like some people, they want to criticize, because if they criticize, if they find a point of weakness that they can attack, then they feel that that comment that they leave on that person's video, for example, is going to show all the other commenters, or any commenters that, you know, might see their comment, that they are smart. They figured out something that no one else has said. Everyone else is just thanking them for the advice. But if they point out that actually the advice is complete bullshit and pointless, then they are the special one. You know, they've seen the secret. They've got this extra inside information that no one else was capable of seeing. And I think that then feels like, yeah, it makes them feel special, and kind of boosts their level of sort of their own perceived sort of level of status, you know, for having this insight. I mean, really what they're doing is just being nasty and finding something to nitpick or criticize, and doesn't really add much value. And even if it did, even if they were right, even if they do point out that, oh, that person has a fat nose, or that person's got spots on their head, that person has a weird looking clock in the background of their video, or that, you know, just pick some, you know, immutable, just weird characteristic of a person or the environment they're in. It's like, yeah, you can criticize it, but it doesn't add much to the conversation. You know, there's not much you can really do about that. So anyway, there's this point, I don't know if I'm really articulating it, but it seems to me that when looking for the kind of motives, the reasons why someone would try to criticize somebody on a YouTube video, or, you know, a social media post, it would be because they feel as though it raises their own level of status, because they were the smart one to be able to find the negative when everyone else was just, you know, looking at the positive, as though no one else could have seen that negative but them. It kind of makes them feel special, maybe. Now, what do you think of that? Is that a right explanation for why someone would be nasty in a video or say some mean shit? It could just be that they're just jealous of any success. So if I go out and I say, oh, you know, I wanted to be a professional football player and I got really good, I got selected for like, you know, my national team, but I can't quite make it into like, you know, the international, you know, circuit or whatever, or if I only make it so far as my local team, even that is success. And people might just think, oh, I don't like the fact that you've had any success and that you're still complaining about it, therefore I'm going to attack you for it. I don't know, maybe there's something there. And I think, like I say, maybe people are misinterpreting a message of struggle as just being pathetic and weak and worthy of shame, basically. This is something I find quite a lot on the internet. Now, it used to be that, you know, whether it was on the internet or in real life, especially being a man, you needed to be the strong, reliable, independent provider type that's got their shit together, that's confident and capable. And when you're putting videos out online, let's just say a tutorial video, you know, you want to be the expert that's going out into the community to help the community because you're just amazingly generous like that, which is all good and well, it's fair enough. But then I think a lot of people just realise that maybe we're not experts, or maybe we have tried to do something but it hasn't worked out for us, or, you know, life is actually quite difficult. You know, I don't just wake up in the morning and get to do what I want because I have certain life circumstances, whether it's like physical or mental health ailments, or just, you know, I'm dealing with living in a shit environment. You know, I don't have certain luxuries, I have certain shortcomings, and those are all manifesting into making my life shit. And life is a struggle, and I want to talk about that, and I want to find other people that are experiencing that so that we can all relate to each other and just acknowledge the fact that there's something going on here and things aren't all perfect. And people just want to find other people they can kind of relate with. So therefore, I think sort of a bit of a sort of struggle culture kind of emerged, or there's a certain, you know, small subsection of, for example, YouTube videos where people like me will complain about, you know, the hardships they're having, you know, the real genuine hardships, you know, whether you're dealing with, you know, high levels of neuroticism, which this channel is about, you know, a sensitivity to anxiety, to stress, which leads to anxiety, or whether you're dealing with autism or ADHD, or, you know, just some personality disorder. You know, there's so much shit that people are dealing with, and if you're not dealing with that shit, it would be easy just to say, I think autism's bullshit, I think ADHD's bullshit, I don't think any of that exists, I don't think depression exists because I've never experienced it, I don't think anxiety exists, I don't get anxious, I think people are just being wusses, they're being pathetic, they're being weak, and they should be shamed for how dare they think that they can make excuses for their own shortcomings and their lack of character in dealing with their problems. I think a lot of people feel like that because they just don't know any better. And I get that, I feel that. I think sometimes people do use their ailments too much as a crutch or an excuse, and I'm not saying you should ever do that. I think you should be relentless in face of all your shortcomings. If you've got a broken leg, I'm not saying that you should just run on it, you know, and just deteriorate even further. But as soon as that leg heals, you know, you need to go out there and, you know, walk or run as fast as you can, and, you know, use it to the best of your ability, and not, you know, use that as a reason to never do anything in life for the rest of your life, if that makes sense. So I kind of get that you should have a little bit of skepticism and a bit of reserve, and to make sure that people aren't kind of manipulating you with, you know, or trying to pull at your heartstrings with a sob story. You know, you don't want to be fooled by crocodile tears, and you don't want to be fooled by people who are just lazy, but they're using the excuse of mental health. Because, yeah, that's a thing that people do, and it's bad, and you should be shamed. But most people don't do that, and I think most people that talk about their genuine struggles, and if they do it in a way in which they've articulated all the things they've tried, all the mountains they've climbed, but they're still coming up short, I think you should just give that person the benefit of the doubt and say, well, look, this person is obviously trying hard, but they're still failing, and they're obviously upset about that, or they become negatively inclined, or they feel bitterness towards their lack of success. Let them have that. And I think it's wrong to sort of misinterpret the message of struggle as just whining and being pathetic, and that someone should be shamed for that. But I think that might be something that people are doing. They want to try and shame people into it because they themselves haven't experienced a problem. They don't have much life experience, and then therefore they just assume that if they don't have that problem, then no one can have that problem. It's just an ignorance and a naivety. And I think a lot of the sort of internet trolls that you'll find online are going to be young people, young guys probably, women as well. It depends on the person. I think young women and women in general are probably more likely to bully other women, and men are probably more likely to bully both men and women. Just men can be really pathetic towards other men sometimes, and then it's a weird thing, because anonymously you can bully someone and you can feel quite good about it. It's like, yeah, I've made that person feel like shit, and I feel good about that. That's, I've showed them. But in real life, no one is going to like you for being a bully. If you're a man that just bullies other people, you're not going to be the sort of people that other men will necessarily want to hang out with, unless they themselves are also shitty men. So yeah, I mean, and another thing I was thinking, like I consider myself a nice guy. Perhaps some people would consider me sort of weak or subservient or overly agreeable. Talking about neuroticism and the big 5 personality trait, one of the big 5 is this agreeable trait, and I'm actually quite low with the agreeability. So it's not that. Simply, I believe in treating people well. I think it's important to be understanding of other people and other people's problems and other people's lives and circumstances. And I think you shouldn't be rude. You should be polite, and you should be understanding, and always give people the benefit of the doubt and trust people first, unless they show you that they can't be trusted. And I'm still very sceptical with people in general, and I think I have to be. It's a sort of, to some degree, a sort of survival preservation instinct. But I try to be nice to people. I try to be a good person. I don't want to be overbearing or cocky and arrogant. I find those sort of things really repugnant. But people that aren't like that, I think that other people kind of see them as weak and as an easy target. If you're the nice guy, it's like the trolls will probably think, oh, look at this weak, nice person that's trying to be very considerate towards others. They're only being considerate towards others because they're weak and pathetic, and they haven't got the balls to stand up for themselves and say what they really think. And again, it's this whole idea of the bully perceiving you as a weak person and stuff like that, and then maybe that is why the bully will want to do the bullying. But and another thing I was thinking as well, like sometimes you'll get a troll, a bully, and they might try and mask their trolling in what they would consider to be like constructive critique, constructive criticism. And they'll say something like, look, for your own good, I want to tell you something that no one else here is saying. You suck, and you need to stop, and you need to do other things. And I'm only telling you that because, it's tough love. I respect what you're doing. I love you, and I want you to succeed. And I want you to succeed by me telling you you're a piece of shit and what you're doing is a massive fucking waste of time. Go off and do something else. People will just say, they'll try and cover up a criticism by just saying, "No, this is for your own good. I'm telling you this to make, to help you man up or to help you get a better grip of the situation." And I know sometimes that's some people's strategy, that's some people's tactic, but I personally would never take that kind of advice from a stranger. I don't know anyone who would. You know, maybe if it's someone that I understand the context of what they're saying, I understand that's their type of personality, I understand that they genuinely care about my life and how things are going. Maybe I could trust people that would say that. The strangers on the internet, no, I don't think that is your objective. I think you just want to be an arsehole, and if I call you out over it, you'll say, oh no, it's only for your own good, I'm only saying this to help you. It's like, no, you're not. You're trying to mask just being a nasty piece of shit in order to make yourself feel better for whatever reason. So, yeah, when it comes to trolls and bullies and stuff, it's like, even though I had to deal with some of that recently and people were just basically, you know, telling me I sucked and I was no good and why should I bother, and, you know, I don't deserve the right to even put videos out into the world, you know, like, at the end of the day, like, the overriding feeling for me personally is just like, why are people saying that? Like, what sort of person would just say like nasty shit to someone on the internet? Why would someone stop and think, you know what, I could go out there and I could find a cause that was worth my time, and then I could put my energies into that. You know, maybe there's some genuine exploitation that's going on, or some genuine corruption, and you could put your energies into revealing that. You know, there's no shortage of it. Find a cause that, that something bad is genuinely happening to humanity, and then maybe try and correct it. You know, call it up. You know, if the government is not working in the interests of its people, then maybe be critical of the government. If a corporation cares more about profits than it does about its own workers or its own customers, then call them up about it. You know, there's no shortage of corrupt corporations or governments out there. But it's weird that some people are like, no, I'm not doing that. What I want to do is find just nice guys, genuine, honest, vulnerable people on the internet, and they're the people that I want to go after. They're the people that I want to direct all my anger, frustration and hatred towards. I mean, what's wrong with people? Like, why would you do that? Obviously they don't really think that far ahead, but it's just one of these weird phenomena. And I think, like I say, I just think that I'm trying to understand the mentality of it, why people would do it. And even though, yeah, if someone says something nasty, it is a problem. It is like, a mosquito buzzing around and it's going to bite you, or maybe it has, and you're just like, oh, this is just a problem for me. It's like a fly just flying around your room, and then you hear it buzzing and it keeps getting in the way, and, it's a nuisance, but really, I guess when it comes to most internet trolls and bullies, I genuinely just see them as something as pathetic and annoying as a mosquito or a fly. I don't know how they see themselves. Maybe they see themselves as useless pieces of shit, and that's why they want to go after people on the internet. But yeah, it's still something you've got to deal with. It's still a problem, and I wish that wasn't a problem. So yeah, sorry I've not really elaborated on all the specifics and given all the details, but I just wanted to just generally talk about this whole idea of being on the internet, putting stuff out into the world, and then having to deal with just trolls when it's like, look, I'm not even saying anything controversial here. Like, if I put out a video just saying that even right now, I'm dealing with some bullies and I'm not happy about it, and I think the bullies are bad people, I don't think there's anything controversial there. I don't think that makes me worthy of being like a target of more bullies. I suppose some bullies would think, hey, actually that's quite funny, the guy's talking about bullies. Wouldn't it be ironic if we started bullying him even more? Because why not? I mean, I suppose if that ever happened on this video, I can just delete the video or delete the comments. But yeah, again, it would just be like an annoying problem to deal with. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this whole subject of bullying, and I suppose really, if you've got any thoughts on it, why you think people do it, you know, other than the fact, you know, because like, people will say like, oh, you know, people just bully because, you know, they feel bad about themselves and they want to take out their frustrations on others, or because they themselves are being bullied. I don't know if it's that simple, really. You know, I still think some people just genuinely get a kick out of watching others suffer, and if they can make other people suffer, then they kind of feel like life is like a zero-sum game where they need to just pull everyone down and push everyone out in order for themselves to kind of rise up. And I think it's just a messed up mentality, personally. But what do you think? Do you think that that's true? Let me know, and you know, we can discuss it more on a future video. Until then, I'll see you later.